Drake. Is the boy coming? Oh wait, can you hear me? Drake, is the boy coming?
I'll check, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Damar said he'll be here soon.
All right, no problem. Okay, we're all here. Let's begin. Tell me when you can see my screen.
And see it, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. All right. So, good evening, gentlemen. Tonight, we're going to be looking at I don't want to say it's a big event, but it is the end of the course. Yeah. We're going to be looking at the second half of Unit 6. And with the second half of Unit 6 coming to an end, it marks the end of all the material in the course. What we're going to be looking at after today is, I guess, just mostly exam prep, which does not necessarily have to have us meeting unless you guys particularly want us to go over some topics that we would have passed. Um, it could come in the form of us meeting and us doing some revision or some prep, or I can make some material available for you guys for you to do your own prep. So it's whatever you choose to do. So you can let me know what you want to do.
Sir, I would mind do the meetings.
Do the meetings, okay. All right. We can talk about that some more. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, after today, no more new material. So we're just going to be doing revision. Okay, so before I get into today's topic, we will do some recap. What we'd have covered on Friday is the 5 characteristics of COTS products, commercial off-the-shelf products. Do you remember those characteristics? Can you guys remind me, or do I need to remind you?
Repeat, sir.
I'm asking if you can remind me. So last week we'd have gone through the 5 characteristics of commercial off-the-shelf systems products. I wanted to know if you'd be able to remind me of those 5 characteristics.
When was the working?
Shall I
Sir,
remind you? Yeah,
sir,
go ahead.
sir, one of them was more maintainable.
Mm-hmm. So more maintainable. We also had reduced cost. We had reliability.
Um, market something.
Mm-hmm.
Market.
Market-driven development, yeah. And the fifth one was higher complexity. So those were some of the characteristics that we have to discuss when we're talking about commercial off-the-shelf products. And each one of those characteristics came with its own advantages and disadvantages. Another thing that we'd have talked about on Friday was the 4 security implications, and those implications being supply chain risk, security reviews, and also, oh no, 2 more, vendor reputation and legal liability. Right? So we covered all that stuff in the first half of Unit 6. Tonight or this evening, is it night yet? Almost not yet. We're going to be covering the second half. I'm going to be looking at 3 things in particular. We're going to be looking at strategic fit, and that's going to ask a question of, does a COTS product align with the business goal? That's strategic fit. The second thing we're going to be looking at is functional integration, and that's going to talk about whether a system can technically work with your existing systems. The third thing we're going to be looking at is some key considerations that determine whether or not a COTS integration succeeds or fails. All right, so we're going to be looking at those 3 things today. Okay. Oh, my mistake. Yeah, cool. So before we get into details though, I want to set up a mental model that's going to carry us through the session. So when you have an organization, when an organization is considering adopting a COTS software or a COTS product, commercial off-the-shelf system, there are 2 fundamental different questions that you need to answer before you actually adopt this product. The first is a business question, and that is, does the product align with where the organization is actually going? That's the question of, or the topic of, strategic fit. The second question is a technical question. Technical question being, can the product actually work with the system that we already have in place. That's a functional integration, right? Both of those questions matter in the context of systems integration. A product can have a perfect strategic fit, but technically the integration is, or let me say, a product that can fit strategically, so like it aligns with the goals of the business, but can't technically integrate with the system or with the organization is functionally useless, right? Because it makes sense on paper, but it won't actually physically work in your organization, meaning you wouldn't be able to deploy it because it wouldn't functionally or physically work or technically work in your system, right? Um, like a product it could integrate beautifully, on the other hand, with your system, meaning it has all the functional and technical requirements to integrate with your system. But if that system doesn't align with your strategy, then you could consider it a waste of an investment. It would be like you automating the wrong thing, or you're automating something that doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be automation, but you're trying to improve a part of your business that doesn't actually matter where it relates to what your business is actually trying to achieve. So two things, technical fit and the functional integration. Sorry, not technical fit, strategic fit, my mistake, right? So successful COTS adoption requires both of those things. So we're going to be thinking about those two individual concepts. No. So we're going to start off with a strategic fit. All right. So strategic fit means ensuring that the COTS product aligns with the organization's overall business goals and long-term strategy. It's not just a matter of, does this solve the problem today or does it solve today's problems? It's more of a matter of, does this make sense 5 years from now? Does it make sense 10 years from now? Right? Or not necessarily 5 or 10 years, but as long as we're going to be going in this particular direction, does it make sense long term? So think about, for example, a regional university considering a new COTS product that's going to be used for a student information system. A strategic question could involve or include, does this product support our academic mission? Does it scale as enrollment grows? Meaning, as we get more students, will it be able to serve the students as the student body increases? Does it align with our long-term digital learning strategy? For example, if it's a case where you're going to adapt, or if since we're using Canvas, will it be able to support Canvas, or will it be able to integrate with Canvas? Another question you could ask is, does the vendor roadmap match your long-term needs? The vendor that's providing the system, do they intend to be around as long as you intend to provide the service? Those are questions that you need to ask, right? And these are business questions. So a product could be excellent in isolation, meaning on paper, it solves all the problems that a generic company could need. But if it doesn't solve the problems you need, then it's a poor strategic fit. If your agency or your company or organization is moving toward, for example, open data, or you want to serve you want to serve your people in a way, the customers in a way where, say, for instance, you want them to serve themselves, meaning you don't want to have it be a case where your customers always have to integrate with a person in your business. It could be a case where you want to have your customers solve their problems with the tools that you provide to them, right? So that's what I mean by self-service. If it's a case where you want to go in that direction, but the product is built around closed workflows that require agency staff to be in the middle of every transaction, then you could consider that a strategic misalignment. Yeah? So the product works on paper by itself, like it does what it says it's supposed to do, but it pulls you away from where your organization is trying to go, right? Strategic fit is assessed at the executive or the management level. And it requires input from leadership who understands the organization's direction, not necessarily just the IT team that understands the technology. Very important. Am I clear? Do we understand? Can I give you another example that may be more relevant or relatable? I can pause here. We get it? We're good? Questions so far?
Yes, sir.
Mhm. All right. So let's think of an example. Let's say, for example, KFC, right? Let's say they decide to implement some new system where they want to offer the best fine dining reservation and table management system on the market. They want to implement real-time reservations, sommelier notes, multi-course pacing, elegant customer-facing booking, right? It could even integrate cleanly with the KFC's kitchen system. Fundamentally, for a restaurant, a generic restaurant, it might work. But strategically, this makes sense for KFC? Tell me if you agree with this. Something like this that you'd expect to have in a five-star fine dining restaurant. Would you expect KFC to adopt something like this? Would it make sense for KFC to adopt something like this? Give me your thoughts. Guys, let me know.
Um,
Let me know
so,
what your thoughts. Mhm.
can you run through the strategic fit again, just to make sure?
The strategic fit. Think of the strategic fit as making sure that we have a system that we implement that actually makes sense for our company. It aligns with the goals and the direction that the company is going. An example I gave was you have KFC. We all know what KFC is.
Yeah.
And they're thinking about implementing a system that improves the dining in experience.
Mm.
Improves it in a way where it starts to, or let me see, improves it in a way that is more related to what you'd see in a five-star fine dining restaurant. So they have customer booking, they have real-time reservations, they have like wine tasting feedback, stuff like that. Multi-course spacing. When I say multi-course spacing, I mean like you have like a five-course meal type thing where you have the food that you're going to be eating coming out in stages, basically. And I want to know, given a system that would allow a restaurant to adapt or uh, implement that type of service, would that make sense for a restaurant like KFC?
No.
No, tell you why.
KFC is a fast food restaurant, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fast food restaurant first. So
Right.
their strategy is not to be a five-star um restaurant. So
Mm-hmm.
their fit would more likely align with being a general um place so they can maximize the profits.
Right.
So they maximize it by having everybody being able to enter. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
a thing where you have to make a schedule appointment or anything.
Right. Okay,
So
good.
wouldn't go for caves.
Good. So with that in mind, if KFC were to adopt this system into their organization, do you think that it would be a waste of money, or you think it would be like what do you think the impact would be?
The impact would be a lot of less. They wouldn't have as much income
Do you think
as
that
they
they lose customers?
yes, very much so, yes, sir.
Okay, so okay, wait. Oh, I was about to disagree a while ago, but I just realized what I explained a while ago. They would lose customers if they completely shifted over into that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So yeah, you're correct. If they completely shifted over to that. But what if they didn't completely shift over to that? What if they included
I
that
was thinking about
as
that
well?
necessarily, like you're saying, like they have like different. Otherwise, from the main ones, the
Mm-hmm.
normal ones, where they still do the general ones. Like if they do it, like they have a next location that does
Mm-hmm.
does the fine dining type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Possible is a
Possibly.
possibility. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, depends very much on the customers, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the reason why I asked that question is because, I mean, I can't really say personally, but I think, like a lot of things that happen in Jamaica, when you have this new fancy stuff that just gets introduced, people will adopt it and like they will try it out and you'll see some engagement from the customers. But after a while, it loses the interest. The interest will be lost, and you're going to find that it's not going to be as novice or it's not going to be as worth it over the long term. So you might find that some people will buy into it and they will go to KFC for fine dining reasons and they'll put on their best clothes and they'll drink wine and whatever. But after a while, it's gonna die out, and people are just going to go to KFC for the KFC, right? So in a case like that, if that were to be the outcome, you'd find that KFC would have invested in the systems that would allow them to provide a service like that. And then it would not generate as much income as they potentially foresaw. So it would essentially become a wasted investment. It would be a waste of money in the long term, right? Because if it's a case where that's not where KFC is trying to go, especially in like the 5, 10 year, the long term plan, then it's not going to do much help and they're not going to make much money off of it. And it will end up as a waste of an investment. Right. So given that, can you give me another example similar to the one I gave you a while ago, where you could imagine some company, whether it be a real one or a fictional one, uh, an example of them adopting a system or a custom off-the-shelf product that is not a good strategic fit? Can you think of any examples? Tariq, I've heard from you. You have any examples? No examples? All right, one sec. All right, well, I mean, hopefully the KFC one would have helped to land the idea of it, so that you understand the concept, right? Um, so yeah, with that, we can move it from strategic fit and we can look at the functional integration side now. So that's going to be the technical side of things or the operational side of things as opposed to the business side of things. So functional integration, that means ensuring that the COTS product can technically or physically or operationally work together with your existing systems, right? So it's an engineering question, like I said, or a technical question. And the question being, can this piece actually, sorry, can the pieces that we're trying to fit together actually physically fit together? Maybe I shouldn't say physically, because that sounds like I'm talking about like a puzzle or something like that. But meaning, are the pieces technically compatible, right? Or technologically compatible? Maybe that's better. So I'll give you 3 concrete examples that you can use that explain what functional integration failure would look like, right? Because it comes in different ways. It can come in different degrees. So the first one, the hard stop version, where it is a complete outright failure. You can have a COTS application, for example, that runs on Linux. I would imagine that you guys are familiar with Linux. I don't remember if I've talked about Linux before. But
Yes,
you
sir.
have a COTS product, yeah? Okay. So you have a COTS product that runs on Linux. But your organization's server runs on Windows, right? So you're trying to adopt some new product or service, but the application that you use, that you bought to offer this product or service, runs only on Linux. It's only compatible with Linux, but your servers all run on Windows. So in a case like that, either you're going to buy new Linux servers and migrate everything over from the Windows servers over to the Linux servers, which is going to cost money upfront. It's going to cost new expertise, meaning the people that maintain the servers, the Windows servers, are now just going to they're now going to have to go and learn Linux, and you may have to pay for that training. Or it means it goes going to completely break your infrastructure, right? Because your entire system could be built on a Windows infrastructure, and now you're going to have to switch out everything, and switching out everything could cause problem. So either you do that, or you can't deploy at all. You have the product, and what you just don't use it because it's not going to work. Then maybe the money to switch out isn't worth it. So functional integration fails before any of the systems touch each other, like before any kind of linking or connecting or communication even starts, right? They're not technologically compatible. All right. So the second degree, we have a partial version where you say, all right, fine, I'm going to get the Linux servers. And you put the application on the Linux server and it run. But the application that you're using isn't compatible with, say, for instance, your authentication service. That is the service that you run that makes sure that a user that is a staff member is actually a staff member, meaning they are cleared to access certain parts of the file system or the application, right? There's this different applications that you use on Windows that can do that called, what's it called again? It's called Active Directory. So maybe you use Active Directory to verify a user in your business, which is, I think it's a Windows only service. So you have your Linux application that's trying to communicate with your Windows authentication system. It's not to say that it's not going to work, It could work, but it might take some work. It's going to take some more configuration to make the compatibility actually work. Wait, where was I? So it will work sometimes, but sometimes it's not going to work, right? So the app itself that you bought, it's running, but it can't plug into the rest of the environment cleanly, right? So that's another example. Third example is the operational version, the operational degree, where the technology works, you buy the application and it works. It works end to end. It works properly on paper in your organization. You have the Linux servers, you got authentication figured out, and you have data flowing from one end to the other, right? But here's the problem. Your IT team is entirely Windows certified. They don't have any training in Linux. So what that means now is you're going to have to go and you're going to have to find somebody with Linux expertise for daily operations. Somebody that can handle patching like updating for bugs and bug fixes, monitoring and troubleshooting. So the integration itself works on paper, but the organization can't accurately operate it because they don't have the people that are trained to use it, right? So that's an example of three different failure modes, right? You have the same root cause, that being the product doesn't fit with the system, and the skills, it doesn't fit with the system that you already have and the skills that you already have, right? And one thing I want to point out that you may notice that is very important, a Linux only application at a Windows organization could still potentially be a perfect strategic fit, right? So maybe it's the best product on the market and it aligns perfectly with where the organization is going. So the strategic fit passes, right? It does exactly what the organization wants, and the organizational goals match perfectly. So this application does exactly what the organization wants to do today. It does what it wants to do 5 years from now and 10 years from now. But the functional integration part of it fails. So that's why it's important for you to do, for you to answer both questions, whether it is a strategic fit and also if it is a functional fit. Tell me if that makes sense. Is that clear? That makes sense? Give me a feedback. You have any questions?
I think so, sir.
Is there any question on your mind or any particular point on your mind that you want clarity on, or is it okay?
I think it's okay, sir.
All right, cool. All right. So going back to that university example that I made earlier, where you have a university, and they may already be using Canvas, right? They use Canvas for their learning management system. So Canvas, it handles course content, it handles assignments, it handles grades, right? Separately, they have a different system that handles finances. It handles the tuition management, or the tuition billing rather, and the student accounts. If that university were to adopt a new COTS, commercial off-the-shelf product, for a student information system, you want to ask, can this new system exchange data with Canvas so that now when a new student enrolls, it automatically handles the flow of data that says when a new a new student enrolls, it automatically spins up a new course container for this student, and it automatically creates a new account for them in the billing system, right? So you want to ask that. Will it be able to push billing information to the finance system in real time? Would it be able to authenticate against the existing account? Also, you want to ask, can it export data in the formats that the other system already know how to consume, right? Those are the technical questions. But you can consider them also operational questions. Because even if the technology can connect, is the workflow the same? Do we need to add any new process that would make the system work more efficiently? Is there something that we have to take out, something we have to add, right? If the COTS system requires new staff, right? If it requires new staff, and the process of getting data from one part of the system to another is entirely different, and it's different from the one that the staff were trained to use, then it becomes a functional integration failure, right? At the operational level. Because the data can flow technically, but it requires some type of intervention that your staff weren't already trained for. So you're going to have to do new training for the system to actually work, right? So that's functional integration, and functional integration is assessed by the IT team. With the IT team, often with the help of the vendor and possibly external system integrators. So it requires a hands-on technical evaluation, and it takes more than just reading the technical documentation. Make sense? So that is strategic fit and functional integration. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put these two concepts side by side so that I can make the distinction clear. We're going to be looking at strategic fit as it exists as a business question about the alignment with goals. It's assessed by executives and management, and it looks long-term, 5 to 10 years, even further than that. And the risk of getting it wrong is a wasted investment. So it's like it could be a case where you buy the right technology, but you buy it for the wrong direction, or you buy it for the wrong reason. That is strategic fit. Functional integration, no, is where you have, it's a technical question that talks about the compatibility with the existing infrastructure of your organization. This is going to be assessed specifically by the IT team and technical specialists. And that looks short term, because if it can work now during the initial rollout, then it should work long term, assuming your goals and the infrastructure stays the same, right? So the risk of getting it wrong is deployment failure. You wouldn't even be able to roll the system out. You wouldn't even be able to incorporate it into your existing system, right? Because you can't actually buy something. You can't buy something that you can't actually use, right? So both concepts, they're very essential, and you need to be able to distinguish them clearly when you're asked to, not just repeat the same idea twice. Yeah. Give me a sec. Let me pause here for a moment. So an example of a product that has a great functional integration but poor strategic fit. We'd have gone over that already with the KFC stuff. Another example would be like a retail POS system that works perfectly with our existing hardware, but it's built for a small shop. where the opening, wait, what? When we're opening a national chain. Okay, right, yeah. So you could think of it as, suppose for instance, you wanted to get a off-the-shelf product that works with a POS system or a cashier computer or terminal, and it was built specifically for like a wholesale, right? You wouldn't take that application and use it in a Price Mart or a Mega Mart because the scope of the strategy for both of those companies, I mean, functionally they do the same thing, but the scope for one is much wider than the other one. So it might be a case where Mega Mart or Price Mart needs more than just the POS system functionality. Maybe they need integration into um, the money part of it as well as the inventory part of it. Things that we'd have gone through similar in the past, right? So it can technically do all the things that we need it to do. It's able to fit technically, technologically in our system, but it doesn't align well. Let me see, functional integration. Yeah, so it fits technologically, but it doesn't fit well in terms of the strategy or the goals, or it doesn't align with the business goals. Yeah. Any questions so far? Any questions on my examples of the topics? Any part you want me to go over again? Or we're good so far?
Good so far, sir.
All right. Okay, so give me a second. All right, so we're gonna get practical now. So once an organization has a decided strategic fit and also a functional integration, like both of those things check out, how do they actually make the integration work, right? So one of the things that we have to cover in the course outline, it lists 9 key considerations. And we're going to be focusing on 7 that come up most often in practice. So the 7 are separate separate the COTS integration lifecycle, incorporate multiple views of requirements. We also have make requirements definition interactive, don't rely on the vendor for everything, select a system integrator, identify any gaps, and modify the business process to align with the COTS product. Let me see. So it is entirely possible for you to be asked to pick a few of these and discuss them in depth. The idea would be for you to choose or pick the ones that resonate the most with you, right? The ones that you can explain clearly with concrete examples. We want quality, we don't want quantity, right? So I would suggest that you try to learn some of these or learn all of them in decent depth, but the ones that resonate with you, the ones that you can relate to, or the ones that you understand best, focus on those. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Am I hot? Okay, so we're going to looking at the first consideration. Hold on one second. Oh, all right. So the first consideration 1, that is separate the COTS integration lifecycle. So you're going to create the COTS integration as its own project, all right? And it's going to have its own distinct phases, not just some subtasks of a larger system development effort. And the reason why this matters is a COTS integration is going to have a different rhythm than a custom development, right? It's not going to be a case where you're going to be hiring developers to build an application for you. You're going to be making decisions to see whether this particular readily built system makes sense within the confines or within the context of your organization. You're not building any features, you're not configuring them, and you're not designing any software architecture. You're just adapting to it. You're buying something and you're going to adapt to it. So the activities that are going to take to integrate this system into your organization are going to be different. The risks, they're also going to be different. And the deliverables are going to be different. Right? So for the university example that we're looking at, what that would mean is You'd have a dedicated project plan for the COTS integration with its own milestones. And those milestones could be vendor evaluation, requirements mapping, configuration design, test installation, pilot deployment, and full rollout. So different parts of the integration. So treating it just like one phase in a larger project is one easy way to get a COTS integration to fail very quickly, right? You don't want to rush it and then fail. You want to consider it as an entire project by itself. I know I said a lot of words a while ago, but I want you to understand. I want to know if you guys understand what I mean by that, right? Just because it's a system that already exists, it's already built and proven to do what it's supposed to do, it does not mean that it's a case where you just buy it and you plug it into your system. The integration of that system that you're buying needs to have a project centered around integrating it by itself. It needs to have the same consideration that you would have if you were to build an entire system. You don't take the same actions, the processes are different, but you want to give it the same level of care as if you were building an entire system. Yes? Do I make sense?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Second consideration. Wait, is this consideration two? Incorporate. Wait, where am I? Oh, no, this one. Okay. So consideration two, incorporate multiple views of requirements. What I mean by that is you are going to be gathering requirements from all of the different stakeholders that are going to be interacting with the system, not just one. So you don't want just the technical perspective. You want the technical perspective, so like that could be the IT team. You want the executive or managerial perspective, that could be the higher ups, and you could potentially also want the perspective of the people going to be using it. So if it's a case where it's going to be used by administrative team or even the students themselves, you'd want to get perspectives or feedback from them as well, right? So you could have staff at the university that the staff that enter the enrollment information and do the management records and manage the records, right? The student records. You're also going to have academic staff that record grades and manage the course listing. And then you're going to have the students that check on their records and they register for courses. You have IT staff who maintain the systems, and each one of these groups, they're going to have different needs. And if you only capture the requirements of one of these groups of people, it could potentially be whoever is the loudest, then the integration could potentially fail for the other users, right? So making sure that you have multiple views on multiple context, multiple views and multiple perspectives, they allow you to resolve conflicts early, right? So you have staff that want one particular workflow, and then you have academic staff that want a different workflow. It's better to discover those conflicts during the collection of requirements, as opposed to having those conflicts show up when you go live, right? This concept would have covered something similar to it, or basically the same, in a previous topic that we'd have done, right? All right, so consideration 3 now. You want to make requirements definition and design interactive. So by that, I mean, we want to interactively refine the requirements through prototyping and feedback instead of trying to get everything right on paper up front, right? So what I mean by that is when you have a COTS system or commercial off-the-shelf system, you often can't fully describe what you're going to need until you see what the product can do. The stakeholder or a person that's going to be using this application or system, they say that they may want X, right? But then they see the product, they see what's the approach to actually doing X is, and they realize that what they said that they wanted isn't actually what they want, right? When they see how it actually works, it's going to help them to realize that what they actually want is Y or even Z, right? But that's normal. You often have cases where stakeholders think that they want a particular thing, but when they see your implementation or they see how X would actually work, they realize, but this isn't actually what they actually want. They think they want it, but it's because they don't actually understand their needs. So building a prototype and getting feedback based on these prototypes would help very much in terms of getting those requirements and finding out the requirement process would actually yield, right? So you wouldn't want to tell the user or tell the stakeholder that they're going to be building this system based on what they want. And then when you actually fully build it and they use it, they realize this isn't what I want at all. You take the requirements or you take their feedback and you build an application or you build a prototype or a small scaled down version of the system using their feedback. And then you show the user what an application given their feedback could potentially look like. And then based on their feedback on that application or that system, then you can say, yes, this is what they want, or no, this isn't actually what they want, based on the feedback that they give. Yes? So that is the process of making requirements interactive, or the definition of requirements interactive. Okay? The fourth consideration. Don't rely on the vendor for everything. So you want to maintain an internal expertise to manage and configure the product rather than being fully vendor dependent. You want to make sure that the people that are going to be maintaining and using the application internally, they know a considerable amount. I don't want to say just as much as the vendor because that may be impossible, right? But you want to make it so that you don't have to call on the vendor for every single problem or issue that arises. You want to make sure that the people that you have internally that use the application know how to use the application very well. They know how to solve problems or troubleshoot issues very well as well. So vendors, they want you to depend on them, right? That's their business model. Because the more you call on them, the more they can charge you for these interactions, for these visits or these troubleshooting sessions. But over dependency is dangerous because if your internal team doesn't understand the product, then every single change that is made or every single product issue that comes up is going to require a vendor ticket. A vendor ticket just means a communication to the vendor. And usually those communications to the vendors, if it results in a visit or troubleshooting session, then they can charge you, right? Every configuration question would require a consulting fee, right? And when the vendor raises their prices for these consultation fees, all you have to do is just take it. You don't have any leverage. You have to just do it, right? Just pay the money. So for the university, this would mean that you'd want to invest in internal training, and also getting documentation from the vendor if it is possible, so that at least a few of the staff internal to the organization or the university would be able to deeply understand the product, right? They'd be able to handle the day-to-day configurations. They'd be able to potentially catch problems early. And they'd also may be able to push back on the vendor when necessary. So if it's a case where the vendor comes to you and say, oh, they potentially need to install this particular thing to solve a problem, because the internal team knows about the internal system and they know things that they otherwise would not without the training, they'd be able to say, no, actually, this thing isn't needed. So we don't have to pay you for this thing, right? Before I continue, any questions so far? We've covered the first four considerations. I'm going to move on to the fifth one now. Questions so far? Are we good? No. All right. Wait, hold on. Oh no. All right, can't use this anymore. Yes, so the fifth consideration now. Selecting a system integrator. So you want to engage a professional integrator to bridge the COTS product with your existing systems, especially when it comes onto an integration that is very complex, right? So a systems integrator, as you know, is a specialist that does does these kinds of integrations for a living, these complex operations for a living, right? They've integrated the same COTS product across dozens of organizations because that's their job. And they know the patterns to look out for. They know the patterns that work, and they know the patterns and the traps that don't work. So for a complex integration with multiple existing systems, it would be a good idea for you to hire an existing integrator. Hiring an existing integrator is often faster, and it also may be cheaper than doing it internally. Yeah. So for the university example, getting an integrator, they would be the ones to handle the technical bridge between the COTS products, the canvas, and also the financial system, right? So the university keep the focus on the academic outcomes, so they get to keep doing the work that they do, and then the integrator handles the wiring in between the systems. Yeah. So that's a consideration again. Sixth consideration is identifying gaps. So identifying gaps means you want to determine what the COTS product does and what it does not do. So what it doesn't cover. And you want to be able to plan for the custom development or the workarounds so that you can close those gaps. Because remember, we've talked about how one of the, what was it? I think it was one of the characteristics of our COTS systems. They may fit perfectly in your system or your organization, but they don't have to. It could be a case where they're a close fit. And if they're a close fit, then you're going to have to implement some workarounds. You're going to have to close some gaps, like I specify here, right? And closing those gaps could come in the form of implementing a custom deployment or development, or it could come in the form of changing an existing process, right? So we're going to be looking at how we can identify those gaps. So yeah, not every COTS product is a perfect fit. Sometimes it can be, but not all the time. You're going to find that there are very often times where the COTS product doesn't do something that you want it to do. You may have a feature that's missing or a process that your organization currently does that the COTS application or the COTS product does not support, right? So the question is not whether or not there are gaps. There are almost always going to be a gap. The question is actually whether you can identify those gaps before you commit to getting the application, right? So in the example of the university, a gap analysis could potentially reveal that the COTS product does not have any feature that handles built-in, what I want to say. It doesn't have any built-in handling for specialized programs. For example, a specialized program could be like a part-time evening degree, for example, like what you guys are doing. Wait, you guys aren't part-time, you guys are full-time. But let's say, for instance, you want to be able to handle a student that wants to do a part-time evening class, right? Or an evening degree. So given that example, the part-time evening degree is structured very differently from the traditional full-time course, right? Or a full-time program, right? So that would be a gap. The university then decides, build a custom module to handle it, modify the workflow. So either they're going to build a custom module that handles that gap, or they're going to make modification to an existing workflow to work around it, or they're just going to accept the gap and they live with the manual process for that particular case, right? So they just either they build some application that is able to handle that gap, or they change the way that they actually process that particular scenario, or they just live without it and they just handle it manually, right? So that's something that you can do to identify those gaps. It's something that you need to do when you're integrating the COTS product into your organization or your system. And then the final one that we're going to be looking at is modify the business process to align with the COTS product. So that's going to come in the form of adapting your organization's workflows to match the product rather than heavily customizing the software. So it's kind of the opposite of what we'd have talked about, where we try to implement a workaround. Yeah. But this one could potentially be counterintuitive, right? So your instinct might be to say, you want to make the application fit the organization. But the problem is heavy customizations of a COTS product defeats the purpose of the product itself. Because if you buy a system or you buy an application and it only works partially, you're going to spend a whole heap of money to make it so that it works perfectly. You may as well just build a system entirely instead of buying something that you have to change, make massive modifications to, right? So you'd lose the cost savings. The vendor could potentially break the customizations that you make, and then maintenance could become even more difficult because now you have two different vendors. One vendor that handles the off-the-shelf product itself, and then another vendor that implements the changes, right? So there could be potential incompatibilities that you're introducing by doing that. So if the COTS product handles a process differently than you currently do, then you need to ask yourself, is the current process genuinely better? Or is it just something that we're used to, right? Often you'll find that the COTS product reflects industry best practices developed across thousands of organizations. And adapting to it might actually be the right call, right? So for the university example, once again, this could mean potentially adopting the product's standard workflows for enrollment processing instead of replicating their existing custom processes, which would mean less customization, lower long-term costs, and easier updates. Yes. Tell me if I make sense. Is that clear? Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be bringing it all together. So we're going to pull all of the things that we'd have gotten from Unit 6 into one picture, yeah? Because now we'd have covered everything from that unit. So COTS integrations, they start with two fits. We have the strategic fit and the functional fit. And if one fails, then you should stop, because you can't just have one and not the other. You have to have both of those things. If the both of them check out, then you're good to execute, right? It means that the integration can take place. And integration means, it doesn't mean just buying the application and plugging it in. It means you're going to treat this integration as if it's one entire project. Gather your requirements from everybody. You iterate through the prototyping. You get your feedback. You keep your internal expertise, which is very important. Don't just entirely rely on the vendor. Bring in an integrator if needed, because they have the experience. They are able to look out for any of the pitfalls or the gaps or the traps that an internal person might fall suspect to. Identify the gaps, which is very important, and adapt the process if it is a case where the product does things differently from how your organization always does it. That is not to say that you should always adapt to what the product is able to do. If it is a case where you find that your way of doing things may not actually be the best way and the product does it a better way, and that could come with research and finding out what market standards are, then you could potentially consider adapting, right? And throughout, you'll be managing the 5 characteristic trade-offs. Those are the cost, reliability, maintainability, complexity, and the menu-driven development. And also the 4 security implementations that we'd have covered on Friday. Yeah? So that is COTS integration. So yeah, that is more or less the end of Unit 6. So on Friday, we would have covered the characteristics, the 4 security implications. Just now we'd have done the strategic bit, functional integration. Where am I on the right page? I think so. Yeah. So yeah. So like I said, with that being the end of it, we can continue. Oh, by the way, any questions? Solid, good.
Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, we can shift into exam prep. Tariq said that he would prefer to have we'll continue the meetings, as opposed to me just issuing content for you guys to read. Demoy, do you prefer to have the sessions as well? I feel like I saw Romain come on the call earlier, but he left after like a minute. Oh
Possibly,
yeah.
sir. We saw him too.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with it. Still continuing the classes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's see now. Let me read through my notes one moment. Click international. Okay. And I could potentially also give you guys some practice questions that would prepare you for the exam as well. But separate from that, one thing I forgot to mention. Well, I guess I did mention it, but the assessment, our third coursework, we'll have presentations, right? Have we started looking at those project out the assessment outlines yet? That's coursework 3. Where I think is coursework 3 group work? I don't remember. Have you started
Uh,
looking at that stuff yet? If no, that's something that I would suggest you go look at now or soon, because we'll have stuff that's due on the 1st of May, according to Canvas. Wait, the 1st of May is next week? That makes sense. Oh, it is. Next week, Friday. Let me see what I have in my notes. It says Friday, May 1st is presentations. Okay. The report, oh, so the report itself is due on Wednesday. So you guys have work to submit on Wednesday, and the presentation is on um what's it called? On Friday. Oh, so it is group work, yeah. So it's stuff that you're going to have to get working on as soon as possible. Questions on that? Have you started looking at that stuff yet?
uh,
Mm-hmm.
looking at it
Mm-hmm.
completely. No, we know about it, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Make sure
we
you start looking at it and start getting to work on it. It being group work means that you guys are going to have to get aligned and work together. So you have all of this week. Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, you have all of this week to work on it.
yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right. So any questions? We're good to close out now. And we meet again on Friday. I'd let you know, I'd post an announcement on what it is we're going to be looking at on Friday.
Yes,
So
sir.
good?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
sir.
All right, cool. All right. So I will talk to you guys. I'll look out for notifications, like I said, announcements, so that I can tell you guys what we're going to be doing for Friday. And I will let you know. So that's it. If there are no more questions, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, sir.
All right, cool.